Trump says relations with Russia are at an all-time low, then warns Vladimir Putin, the U.S. is very, very strong. President Donald Trump fired a warning shot at Russia on Wednesday, saying at a news conference that the U.S. is just as strong as it is, as a battle of wills between Moscow and Washington threatened to erupt into a Cold War-style conflict. The relationship between the two countries is at an all-time low, Trump proclaimed at a White House press conference tied to the visit of the NATO Secretary General. Right now we're not getting along with Russia at all, Trump observed. Putin is the leader of Russia. Russia is a strong country. We're a very, very strong country. We're going to see how that all works out. Trump's presser with the NATO Secretary General came hours after Putin agreed to see his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, on the fly amid mounting tensions between the two countries. Tillerson said earlier in the day, at a joint news conference with his Russian counterpart that took place just before Trump's, that the U.S. was at a low point in its relations with Putin's government. Putin made a similar point in an interview that aired just as Tillerson was sitting down to a meeting with the Russian foreign minister. The chest-beating had Tillerson cautioning from Moscow that the two countries with nuclear weapons must have warmer relations. Russia has aggressively pushed back on the Trump administration's assertions that Syria's dictator gassed his country's civilians last week in horrific attack that claimed 87 lives. Tillerson said Wednesday that the U.S. is quite confident Bashar al-Assad was behind the massacre. The facts that we have are conclusive, he said. Speaking to the press with Tillerson, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian diplomat, demanded an independent investigation into the attack his country says was the work of extremists. We do not wish to speculate, he said. We want to establish the truth, the full truth. Despite the bickering in the Kremlin press conference, Trump said of Tillerson's Moscow meetings, "I'm hearing things went pretty well, maybe better than anticipated. It would be wonderful, as we were discussing just a little while ago, if NATO and our country could get along with Russia. Right now we're not getting along with Russia at all. We may be at an all-time low in terms of relationship with Russia." He could not say if Russia had knowledge of Assad's attack before it happened, but admitted that it was a possibility. "I would like to think that they didn't know," he said. "But certainly they could have. They were there. So we'll find out." Defense Secretary James Mattis and a Pentagon group are looking into it, Trump said. "When you get into the gases, especially that form, it was vicious and violent, and everybody in this room saw it all too many times over the last 3 or 4 days, young children dying, babies dying, fathers holding children in their arms that were dead children. There can't be a worse sight and it shouldn't be allowed," Trump stated. The U.S. president said the ghastly sight was a butcher and it compelled him to act. "I have absolutely no doubt we did the right thing, and it was very, very successfully done, as you well know," he said. The strained relations with Russia over the gas attack in Syria had Trump reversing his stance on NATO, which he said had begun to fight terrorism after he complained it didn't. "I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete. It's my hope that NATO will take on an increased role supporting our Iraqi partners in our fight against ISIS," Trump said. Trump said from the White House's East Room that he and UN Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg had a productive discussion this afternoon about the alliance and the aid it can provide in the global fight against terrorism. "We are grateful for the support of NATO members and partners in their condemnation of Assad's murderous attack, using the most horrible weapons," Trump said. "The vicious slaughter of innocent civilians with chemical weapons, including the barbaric killing of small and helpless children and babies, must be forcefully rejected by any nation that values human life," he added. "It is time to end this brutal civil war, defeat terrorists, and allow refugees to return home." Trump argued in his remarks that the world is a mess, but "I think by the time we finish, I think it's going to be a lot better place to live. And I can tell you that, speaking for myself, by the time I'm finished, it's going to be a lot better place to live in, because right now it's nasty," he said. As a candidate, Trump put the United States allies on edge as he whacked NATO countries for failing to pay their fair share of defense costs and warned there would be consequences if they continued to miss payments. The White House stressed Wednesday that Trump is 100% committed to the Mutual Defense Organization. Distancing itself from his campaign time comments, the White House said Trump had made over a dozen calls to leaders of NATO countries and emphasized his firm commitment to all of them. Stoltenberg further reminded Trump in the afternoon presser that NATO serves as a check on Russian aggression. "I strongly believe that the only way to deter Russia is to be strong," Stoltenberg said. He said it was strategically important keep the lines of communication open between Russia and member nations, too, in order to prevent additional conflicts. "The only way to avoid a new Cold War, avoid a new arms race and avoid increasing tensions is to continue to engage Russia is a political dialogue and to make sure that what we do is defensive and proportionate in response to a more assertive Russia," he assessed.